My name is Laurel Brenner, and I turned 66 last spring, old enough to know that peace can vanish faster than sunrise mist. That morning began like any other, with the kind of quiet that feels alive. The air in Ashland was crisp and blue, carrying the scent of wet soil and apple blossoms. I poured my first cup of coffee and stepped out onto the porch, where the horses were already stirring beyond the fence. The farm had been my husband, David's dream, but after he passed, it became my refuge. 40 acres of pasture and orchard, tucked between the mountains, far enough from town that silence had texture. I'd learned to mend fences, balance feed, and live with my own company. Some days I spoke more to the animals than to people, and that suited me fine. I carried a bucket of oats to the barn, the wood still dark from the early dew. Relic, my old mare, nudged my shoulder impatiently. "Patience, girl," I murmured, stroking the white blaze down her nose. Her warmth grounded me the rhythm of care, of something needing me, kept the loneliness from growing teeth. Back in the kitchen, I opened my journal, the same one I'd kept since David's illness. My handwriting had grown smaller over the years, neater, as if I were trying to take up less space in the world. I wrote a single line before the phone buzzed across the counter, shattering the quiet. The screen lit with a name I hadn't seen in months, Ethan, my only son. My heart stuttered, torn between joy and unease. I wiped my hands, picked up the phone, and whispered, "Hey, sweetheart." His voice sounded distant, hurried. "Hi, Mom, got a minute?" And just like that, the peace broke. "Got a minute," Ethan repeated. His tone clipped in that way people sound when they're already somewhere else. I smiled, though he couldn't see it. "For you, I always do." It had been months since I'd heard his voice since Christmas, when he'd promised to visit soon. I could hear background chatter, the soft trill of laughter that didn't belong to him. Then a woman's voice, bright, polished, practiced, cut through. "Hi, Laurel. It's Madison," she said. Her words sugary but sharp around the edges. "We're coming up this weekend. Me, Ethan, and about 12 of my relatives. It'll be so fun. We'll need the big bedrooms for the parents, though. You can take the couch or maybe the barn if you want some quiet." For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. "The barn?" My mouth went dry. Before I could respond, Ethan's voice slid back in, low and uneasy. "Mom, it's already kind of set. Madison's family hasn't been out to the country before. They're excited." "Ethan," I said carefully, "you didn't think to ask me first." He sighed. "You've got space. Mom, you always say it's too quiet up there." His words landed like stones in my chest. Too quiet. I stared out the window, watching Relic graze under the pear tree David had planted decades ago. "All right," I said finally, because anything else might have cracked my voice. "If that's what you've decided, great. We'll be there Friday evening," Madison chirped. Before the line went dead, the phone slipped from my hand and thudded against the counter. For a long moment, I stood there, the silence around me heavier than before, thicker, sharper, almost unbreathable. That evening, the mountains dimmed to purple, and a thin wind swept through the orchard. I couldn't sit still. I walked the property line with a flashlight, its beam sliding over wet grass and fence posts that David had once set himself. Every inch of this land still carried his touch, the careful order of his hands, the patience he taught into every nail and hinge. He used to say, "Promise me, Laurel, don't ever let anyone treat this place, or yourself, as something they can just borrow." I had laughed then, teasing him for his seriousness. Now, the words felt carved into the air around me. I stopped by the barn, leaning my hand against the cool wood. Inside, Relic shifted softly, her tail brushing the stall door. "They said I could sleep in here," I whispered to her. She blinked. calm as ever, and in her stillness I heard what David would have said. You don't have to fight to win. You just have to know what's yours. The moonlight caught the edge of the old farmhouse, the windows glowing faintly from the last lamp I hadn't turned off. It didn't look fragile. It looked waiting. I took a slow breath, the kind that steadies you from the inside out. No anger, no shouting, no desperate calls, just a quiet, deliberate decision forming beneath my ribs. If they wanted to treat my home like a backdrop, I'd make sure they learned what it truly meant to live on a farm. By morning, the first edge of resolve had settled in me like good soil after rain. I brewed coffee strong enough to stir thought and called Mr. Carson, my attorney in town. He'd handled everything after David's passing, a careful man with the patience of a stone mason. Just checking on something, I said when he answered. The trust David set up for the property, it's still active, isn't it? Of course, he replied, flipping through files on his end. The Brenner Trust holds the deed. No one can sell, transfer, or alter it without your written consent. Not even family. His assurance landed softly, like a door clicking shut. I thanked him, then stood at the window watching the orchard move in the wind. The anger had passed. Only clarity remained. I started with my room. I packed away the quilts my mother made and the framed photos that didn't need to be stared at by strangers. The master door got a new lock, a small thing, but it steadied my breathing. Then came the guest wing. Fresh sheets, nothing fancy. Towels folded neatly, the kind that dry more than they impress. I unplugged the Wi-Fi, left a note on the router service currently limited by terrain. Not untrue. Out by the front hall, I pinned a laminated sheet to the bulletin board. Brenner Farm Safety Rules. 1. Do not approach horses without supervision. 2. Chores are shared responsibilities. 3. Respect the property and each other. Clara, my ranch hand, arrived just before noon. She was a broad-shouldered woman in her 50s, the kind who could lift a hay bale with one hand and slice gossip with the other. When I told her what was coming, she grinned. You want it neat, fair, and proper, she said. That's the best kind of lesson. By late afternoon, everything was ready, the house cleaner than ever. Boundaries visible in every small detail. I walked through each room slowly, touching doorknobs, counting towels, feeling control return in quiet, steady waves. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like a widow keeping something alive. I felt like the keeper of a line no one would cross. The gravel road began to hum around 3 in the afternoon. Dust rose in the distance like the first signal of a coming storm. By the time the convoy appeared, 3 SUVs and a rental van, the air itself seemed to tense. I wiped my hands on my jeans, watching from the porch as doors swung open and voices spilled into the quiet. Madison stepped out first. Designer sunglasses flashing, her phone already raised for a panoramic video. We made it, she announced to her followers, or maybe just to herself. Ethan climbed out slower, looking tired, uncertain. Behind them came a line of strangers dragging shiny luggage across the gravel, laughing too loud for the space they'd just entered. Welcome to Brenner Farm, I said evenly. Please park by the fence. The horses spook if engines idle too long. Madison smiled without looking at me. Oh, we'll just unload here. It's easier for everyone. Not for the animals, I replied. My tone must have surprised her because she blinked, hesitated, then gestured the drivers toward the fence. Inside, I handed her a neat stack of printed waivers and a sheet of the farm's safety rules. She laughed. Waivers, Laurel. We're not signing contracts. It's just a weekend. It's still my property, I said gently. Everyone who stays here signs. Standard insurance procedure. She looked at Ethan, expecting backup. He shifted uncomfortably, took the papers, and began to pass them out. One by one, the relatives signed in awkward silence. I guided them to their rooms, each neatly arranged. Simple, and bare of anything personal. Madison lingered near the end of the hall, trying the knob to my locked bedroom. It didn't turn. "Oh," she said lightly. "I thought this was the master suite." "It is," I answered, meeting her eyes. "And it's occupied." Her smile tightened. "We just assumed guests don't rearrange hosts," I said. Something in my voice ended the conversation. She turned away, heels clicking too sharply against the hardwood floor, as I watched them settle in chattering, posing for photos, calling out complaints about the rustic bathrooms. The house itself seemed to listen, and for the first time, it wasn't silent from grief. It was waiting. The first morning began with the sound of confusion. Someone screamed about the rooster. Another complained about the smell. I'd warned them the horses rose early and the hens louder. But few city visitors believe a farm actually wakes with the sun. When I came downstairs at 6, Madison was standing by the kitchen island in silk pajamas, clutching a mug as if it might save her. "There's no Wi-Fi," she said, as if announcing a national emergency. "There's a signal up by the pasture," I replied. "If you stand near the fence, sometimes it catches." She blinked. "That's half a mile away. That's the beauty of open space. Outside." Ethan's father was trying to navigate the muddy path in loafers, while one of Madison's cousins shrieked after a hen that had escaped the coop. Clara, steady as ever, handed him a rake. "Best use it to guide her back," she advised. He just stared at the tool like it was a foreign instrument. By 8, the house looked like a storm had passed. Towels strewn across chairs, muddy prints on the porch, the air thick with irritation. I moved through it all calmly, refilling coffee, answering questions no one really listened to. When a cousin asked if I could turn the heat up a bit, I nodded toward the fireplace. "You're welcome to start a fire. There's wood stacked outside." They stared at the logs as if they expected them to ignite out of pity. By afternoon, the rain came sudden and heavy, drenching the gravel drive and trapping them all inside. The laughter had faded by then. Someone complained about country humidity. Another demanded to know why the towels were so rough. I simply smiled and handed them more. Through the window, I saw Clara leading the horses to shelter, her boots sinking in the mud. Madison watched for a moment before turning away. "This place could be beautiful," she said softly, "if it weren't so exhausting." "It is beautiful," I answered, "because it's real." That evening, while the guests huddled around their phones, desperate for a bar of signal, I stepped onto the porch. The rain had stopped, leaving the fields glistening under a bruised pink sky. The frogs had begun their song, low and content. Behind me, the city voices grew quieter, replaced by the uneasy silence of people meeting discomfort for the first time. Out there, nature didn't bend for anyone, and neither did I. The storm came in hard from the west, the kind that rolled over the hills like a black tide. By evening, the power flickered once, twice, and then went out completely. The sudden dark pulled a hush through the house. For a moment, even the guests seemed to understand where they were deep in real country, where nature decided the rhythm. Madison's voice broke the silence first. "This can't be happening." She tapped her phone screen uselessly, its glow lighting her anxious face. "Did you forget to pay the electric bill? I lit a candle on the kitchen counter. The lines go down when it storms. Happens every few months. We'll be fine." "Fine," she repeated, her tone sharp enough to cut glass. "We can't cook. The heat's off. And there's no Wi-Fi. This is ridiculous." Ethan stepped forward, his shoulders tight. "Madison, just stop." She turned to him, eyes flashing. Stop. Your mother brought us here knowing this would happen. It's like she planned it. I met her glare. Steady and calm. The storm doesn't ask permission from anyone. Madison. She slammed her hand on the counter, candles trembling. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Watching us suffer out here like some lesson? Ethan's voice rose before I could speak. Enough. The word hit the air like thunder, louder than the storm outside. Everyone froze. You don't talk to her like that, he said, his face pale but firm. Madison stared at him, stunned. She's treating us like she's treating us better than we deserve. His voice cracked a little, but the truth in it steadied him. This is her home. She built it. She kept it going. You don't get to walk in and act like it's a hotel. Outside. A gust rattled the windows, and the horses in the barn whinnied nervously. The air inside changed heavier, but clearer. I moved to the fireplace, struck a match, and watched the flame catch on dry kindling. Light bloomed across the room, soft and human. You don't need to understand it, I said quietly. Just remember, respect isn't inherited, it's learned. Madison said nothing. The rest of the family shifted, uncomfortably, the weight of her silence settling like dust after a storm. Ethan helped me with the lanterns, neither of us saying much. Outside, rain hammered the roof, but the tension had cracked open something larger. An old grief? Maybe. Or a long-delayed understanding. When the fire finally took, warmth spread through the room. Shadows danced over their uneasy faces. The storm still raged, but I could feel its purpose teaching, cleansing, reminding. By the time the thunder faded, no one complained about the dark. They just sat there, quiet, listening to the wind sweep clean what needed to be changed. Morning arrived pale and cold, the kind of quiet that comes after a storm when the world hasn't decided yet whether to forgive itself. I woke early, made coffee on the gas stove, and laid a single manila folder on the kitchen table. The Brenner trust file. David's handwriting on the front still carried a weight that could silence any room. By the time everyone gathered, the mood was subdued. No one met my eyes except Ethan. He looked like a man who hadn't slept, but something had shifted behind his expression. An understanding that hadn't been there before. Before you all leave, I began, there's something you should know. This farm isn't just land. It's a promise. I opened the file, spreading out copies of legal documents, the stamped seal of the county clerk shining faintly in the morning light. The Brenner Land Trust was created by David before he died. It ensures this property will never be sold, divided, or used for profit. It belongs to the land itself and to the work that keeps it alive. Madison gave a short, uneasy laugh. That's lovely. But I slid my phone across the table. The screen glowed with messages, her own words. Screenshots forwarded to me by a mutual acquaintance in town. We'll convince Ethan's mom to move to assisted living. The farm's prime real estate, imagine what we could do with it. Another, once she's out, we flip it. Easy profit. The color drained from her face. Ethan stared at the screen, then at her, silent. I reached into the folder and unfolded an envelope, edges yellowed from time, David's handwriting strong, deliberate. I began to read. If you're holding this, Laurel, it means I'm gone. Protect the land. And it will protect you. Don't let anyone treat what we built as dirt for sale. It's more than a home, it's who we were. The room was still. Even the wind outside seemed to stop listening. When I looked up, Ethan's eyes were wet. Madison couldn't meet mine. I placed the letter gently back into the folder. Now you understand, I said quietly. This place was never for taking. It was for keeping. No one argued. Some truths didn't need permission to stand. By noon, The sheriff's deputy arrived in a county truck, boots muddy from another call. He was polite, professional, the way people are when they already understand the story without needing to hear it. Just here to make sure everything goes smooth. Mrs. Brenner, he said, tipping his hat. Madison stood near the porch, her sunglasses hiding eyes that had clearly been crying. Her suitcase wheels dragged across the gravel, catching on stones. The rest of her relatives waited by the cars, quiet, subdued, as if the farm itself had humbled them. Ethan approached last, hands shoved in his jacket pockets. "Mom," he began, voice thick. "I'm sorry for not seeing it, for letting her talk me into—" "You don't need to explain," I said gently. "Just make sure you remember." He nodded, swallowing hard. "I'll do better. I hope so." I gave a small smile, the kind that carries both forgiveness and distance. "Drive safe and think." The deputy started the engine, a low rumble breaking the fragile calm. Madison turned once before stepping into the SUV, her mouth opening as if to speak. But no words came. The door shut softly, and the convoy rolled down the long dirt road, leaving only dust and the echo of their leaving. I stood on the porch until the sound faded completely. The air was still again, heavy, honest. And mine, no triumph, no bitterness, only the kind of peace that doesn't announce itself. It simply stays. Weeks passed, and the land began to breathe again. The orchard bloomed early that spring, the air sharp with apple blossoms and damp soil. I spent my mornings helping neighbors, retired couples, widows, veterans, people who'd nearly lost what was theirs to careless signatures or smooth-talking relatives. Mr. Carson helped me set up a small program at the library, free consultations, simple guides on home protection. I called it the Harbor Light Project. One afternoon, I cleaned the porch lantern David had restored years ago, the one he'd said should always stay lit, no matter who's coming up the road. Beside it, I framed his letter. The words had faded slightly, but the ink still carried warmth. When the mail came, there was a single envelope with Ethan's handwriting. The note inside was short. "I understand now. I'm sorry. I'll come by when you're ready." I stood by the porch, the light flickering against the glass, the orchard humming softly in the wind. "That's a start," I whispered, tracing David's signature at the bottom of the letter beside the lantern's glow. The wind shifted, gentle and clean. The farm no longer felt like a fortress. It felt like home again, guarded, but open to the right kind of return.